to another FaceHammer Advent show, and today we're going to talk through, well, Les is going to talk through his top 5 paints that you should own if you don't own them.
Yeah. So Byron set us the challenge to think about this now. Hopefully you'll either will have seen Byron's video or you will be seeing Byron's video, depending on how and when I decide to edit them and put them up in that order. But it's so Byron set the challenge. So yeah, like first on my list, it was like 1 blue, 1 red, 1 metallic, 1 green, and 1 renegade color. I believe my first one that we've got up is Thunderhawk Blue, isn't it, Russ?
Yeah. Yeah, Thunderhawk Blue is your first paint.
Okay, that's cool, because I can't see what was on Russ's screen just in case, and I could start talking about anything. So you'll notice a bit of a trend with this, and I'll get into why I like Thunderhawk Blue so much in a second. One of the other colours that I've got in here sort of like complements Thunderhawk Blue massively. But essentially, Thunderhawk Blue for me, I think is the best blue on the market. Just I like the tone. I like the way I like the look of it. It's like got that paleness to it. It's quite grey, and it is a perfect highlight for my favourite way of painting at the moment, which is painting black, which I follow essentially the heavy metal guide, which is paint it black, paint it Incubi Darkness, paint it Thunderhawk Blue, then do Fenrisian, and then spot it with Blue Horror. And yeah, it's not only Thunderhawk Blue for me is like that perfect cold highlight for a black, or even a darker blue. If you were doing like a Cantor, I think Thunderhawk would, take it down that cool route instead of taking it down sort of like the more, ultramarine style sort of warm blues that they do quite a lot of.
It's a bit like the old Hawk Turquoise, isn't it? But it's almost Hawk Turquoise and Fortress Grey mixed together. Was the old the old sort of adage for black, and it's kind of in one pot pre-mixed.
Yeah,
it's just I love it. Color, yeah.
It also works really well if you don't go down the Incubi Darkness route. It's a really nice complement to like a Dark Reaper. I can talk about different ways of highlighting black like all day long because there's so many different routes you can do, whether you go up sort of like Incubi through Thunderhawk or you go down the Dark Reaper through Mechanicus Dawnstone sort of way. But yeah, like Thunderhawk Blue, I definitely think everyone should own it. If they don't, it's a really nice color even in its own right. As well, it goes on really well. So,
cool.
What is my next one, Russ?
Your Corn Red Air, as you've got here.
Corn Red Air,
a weird one.
Yeah, like a lot of people are going to be like, "What?" So I really like Corn Red Air. Now I think that Corn Red and Corn Red Air are slightly different colors. I know that you've had that in the past. For me, I found Corn Red Air. I just use it for everything. I don't use it as an air paint. I use it as an actual base for all of my reds. I find Corn Red can be quite a thick paint, and it needs to be I need to thin it on a palette quite a lot. And whereas with Corn Red Air, I find that the coverage of it's really, really nice. I feel that when you highlight it up via Mephiston Fire Dragon Bright, it looks really nice. I normally go. I've got a couple of premixes that I use a lot of, which is Corn Red Air and Black 50/50, and I'll go Corn Red Air Black, Corn Red Air, Mephiston Fire Dragon, and then that's like how I work up sort of like that vibrant red color. With the shades, but I do like it. I'm not sure if you've owned Corn Red Air and you can just comment on it, or is it something that you're not?
I've got it,
you've found it different.
Not really used it much because I like Corn Red, but I've never used GW Air paints with a brush.
No.
I actually, for my black red, I use this Black Red by AK Interactive, so that's my base coat for red generally. And I'll recently shade that with black, so it depends. It depends really. So
I think, I tend to these days, because I'm watching so many heavy metal Twitch shows. I tend to just follow the standard sort of like the heavy metal guides, and a lot of the time they mix sort of like the base color with black or a brown. So for instance on Space Wolves they do the Fang with Scorched Brown 50/50, and that's the recess shade on Space Marine armor. And that's just how I tend to. That's why I sort of like stick within the GW world a lot of the time. But yeah, I really rate it. I think it's really. I mean, it's a little bit. You probably need to put 2 thin coats down, as opposed to 1, because like Corn Red, you can almost just slap on in 1. But I find that it's quite a thick paint, and I find for somebody who's trying to be efficient, I tend to find it's easier to not I just do it straight out of the pot with it air as opposed to putting it onto a pallet.
Yeah, that's cool. I always like that. That's my preferred way.
yeah, rather than get it straight onto the wet pallet.
Renegade choice, I think you said, which is a contrast paint.
Yeah, so I absolutely love Basilicum Grey. I think that it's transparent enough that you can use it as a recess shade on a really strong color. So if you had, say, red armor, you can use it in the recesses, and it doesn't overpower. It doesn't look grey in those recesses. I find it's perfect. I use it these days. I use it straight over metallics just as a wash. I really like the way it behaves when you paint it over lead voucher or Iron Hands steel. Yeah, I just think it's so versatile. It's up there with Black Templar with my most used contrast paint. I think you touch on in a different video about how you use it as a recess shade on white. It works really well as a recess shade on grey. For me, I use it as a pinch in, for anything other than unless you're going down like a cream route and you want like a brownie sort of like recess shade. But yeah, I really like it. It's you can build it up over multiple layers on like metal, make it fade. So if you're doing sword and you did like the opposite end transition, you just apply it as like a glaze. And yeah, I just love it. It's my go-to now. Don't use Nuln Oil anymore. Just use that.
Yeah, I don't use the GW washes very much anymore. I use kind of either thinned paint or contrast. I think it's the nature of the beast, because I used to like the old washes when you had a lot more pigment in them. They're almost like inks.
Yeah.
And I found that the newer washes, like sort of from the Devil and Mud era, and that they kind of don't have a lot of. They almost you put a lot of wash on and don't get a lot of recess shade.
You need to either multiple it up, and then you run the risk of it being too strong.
And then it goes greyish as well. Like if you put too much on, and because the medium kind of starts to like cake up. So yeah, I think contrast paints are fantastic for washing. But Basilicum Grey is awesome. I like it. It's a really good paint. So
yes, I love it. I think it's brilliant.
And you sort of mentioned this already, but Incubi Darkness.
Incubi Darkness is my favourite paint. It's not just my favourite paint, and not my favourite green paint. It's actually my favourite paint. For me, I can't see me ever highlighting black without starting with Incubi Darkness as a, as the chunky highlight, shall we say? I just think it's just such a versatile paint. You use it to highlight black. I use it really nicely, thin it down, use it as a glaze over white, and it gives it like this, like a slightly, not turquoisey color, but it's got like that scaly green-esque sort of like tint when you're using it as a glaze. But yeah, it's
good just for like golds as well for that. If you want it to look like aged or sort of like sort of blighted, it's a good color for that.
I just think it's brilliant. And yeah, I mean, I will rave and rave and rave about the GW cold black scheme. I think it's perfect. If you look at the new Shadespire, the Shadespire Warriors of Chaos models that they've released that are not available yet, like that is a perfect example of how the GW cold black works, which is using a black Incubi Darkness as a chunky highlight, which then creates the optical illusion of you blending between black and Incubi, the black and the highlight, because it's sort of like that middle ground color, and then you edge it really nicely with Thunderhawk, and then you hit the tops of the armor panels Fenrisian, and then spot it with Blue Horror. And like for me, that is just, I just love it. It just really like ticks my boxes. I think it's brilliant. I do every army like that.
Good as well if you want to do a crimson or a red. Like if you mix Incubi Darkness with Screamer Pink, you get a really nice burgundy crimson. So like I've done the robes on my sorcerer. They basically they're black Incubi and Screamer Pink, and then it's Screamer and Incubi. Then it goes into pure Screamer, and then up into Pink Horror. But basically, it's a beautiful. It behaves beautifully with reds as well as purples. So it sort of fits with blues, it fits with reds, it fits with purples. You can use it in greens. It pretty much can go on anything. It's a great color. So yeah, definitely a good pick.
That's amazing. And then my last one, which is I think me, you, and Byron all have very different. We've all picked a different version of these metallics. I think Byron picked silver. You will have said I think
Chrome,
in one
probably,
of the videos
but they're
you
all
said
the same,
chrome.
effectively.
Yeah,
They,
and I've picked aluminium.
Mine is whichever one I grab first, because I have all of them and they all look very much similar. So I think the silver's is a bit darker. Aluminium and chrome are basically the same color in my eyes. I don't think there's much in it, but
they're so pigment heavy and they cover perfectly. For me, again, I use it as either as a base color and then apply Basilicum Grey over the top of it, or I use like a lead voucher iron hand steel and then edge it with aluminium. I just think it's a really nice color. I mix it into my gold recipes and highlight gold with it. It'll be I'll use Retributor, shade it, Retributor 50/50 aluminium, highlight, and then highlight it with pure aluminium at the end, just because it just works really well, as opposed to, I don't know, I just find it behaves a lot nicer than using sort of like the Genner's Gold GW colors. I think it's just, there's a lot of opportunity with those paints if they're not thinned or mixed appropriately to not perform the way you want them to. It's they do a really nice result if you get it right, but I think this is just a little bit easier and it's all about time, particularly with what me and you do as a day-to-day job at the moment with the with the commission painting. It's all about being efficient and getting the best result in the quickest time possible.
Yeah, I mean, I quite often will paint all the metallics in chrome, and I'll put either snakebite leather contrast for gold, or I'll put Basilicum Grey for silver, and then I'll just highlight at the end with either I use some of the Pro Acryl. They're almost like pre-mixed silver and gold. This is bright gold, and they do bronze when they do it, or just pure silver, depending on what it is. But if you haven't used the Model Air metallics or the Game Air metallics, it doesn't really matter. But those air metallics as a paint are brilliant, and I would suggest to anyone just pick a couple up and play with them. Because you'll probably never go back. And if you're a big fan of the old GW metallics, that's the Mineral Silver, Chainmail, and Bolt Gun. Those colours exist with different names in the Vallejo Game Air range, because it's almost exactly the same as the GW old range with new names. So they do behave slightly differently, but you can get like your I think it's like Warlord purple is the same as the old Warplock purple and things like that. So it's a bit cheeky, but you can if you want to relive those old colours and get them in a nice thinned consistency with good pigment, then the Air range is fantastic for that.
Yeah, it's really good. But yeah, I think they're my five. I think they're really. I mean, like I said, I think everyone should own them personally. Just as a toolbox paint.
Cool. Well, let us know what you think below. If you want to pick them up, then head over to Element Games for the link below. Like and subscribe and that, and we'll see you tomorrow for another video.